Hello, and my name is Peter Rushmer, and I'm your host today of a Half Dozen Things podcast. A Half Dozen Things is a podcast for business owners and professionals just like you. Whether you're an underdog hungry for success or you're already smashing it but want to continue to level up, we're here each week for you to get insight and learning from the very best in the business. No fluff, no BS, and no self-proclaimed gurus talking about how easy business or life is. Just real, frank, and raw conversations. Cool, so we're rolling and the light has gone red. It's lovely to have you join me, Polly.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. And we were kindly introduced by a previous guest, Katie Walton. And hopefully the listeners who are religiously listening to every episode will have heard Katie's podcast, which was actually really great. She did 6 areas for getting the very best out of your people. It was absolutely fantastic. So how do you know Katie, Polly?
Katie and I are both coaches, and we did a course together on team coaching probably 3 or 4 years ago. So we've stayed in touch since then.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, she is lovely. And we co-host a networking group around our way in Peterborough called HR Connect over coffee. And we sort of invite people in the HR L&D world to come join us for educational sessions and stuff like that. And she always does a fantastic job. She's a very good host.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, in fact, she taught me everything I know. No. So Polly, it's fantastic to have you join us. Are you able to just share with the listeners? I've done a bit about your bio, but just share a bit more about sort of what you do and how you help people with your coaching.
So I'm an executive coach, which really means that I coach people within a corporate setting. That's what I've always done for the last 5 or 6 years. But since lockdown, I'm doing what everybody else is doing and slightly pivoting. So my largest client was always the National Theatre. And obviously theatres aren't doing particularly well, don't really seem to have any business at the moment. So that I'm needing to pivot and find other work. So I'm doing a lot more work with one-to-one people and coaching groups, small groups of people for support group coaching. So it could be people being made redundant or parents struggling with the whole new thing of trying to work from home whilst having kids running around the house and trying to help with schooling as well. So kind of anything. I think the thing about coaching is you can support anybody at any stage of their lives if they want it.
That's absolutely fantastic. Do you know what? It's a big challenge. We've got 4 at home, and trying to run a business and homeschool is it's pretty challenging, to be fair. Pretty challenging. Yeah, and just before we came on the camera, Polly gave me some really good feedback that I look like a rugby player with like the branded background from like an interview afterwards, which is the first time I've heard it, and I'm feeling dead chuffed with that. It's just the corporate branding, but we've always the business. I've always tried to make the business look a bit bigger than it is, and I probably shouldn't tell people that, but hey, I'm quite honest. So it's part of one of my visions and values as well, Polly, which actually it's one of yours as well. And I'm really, really excited to hear about your 6 areas for business success, which include acceptance, honesty, responsibility, authenticity, simplicity and fun. They're all really great areas for us to discuss. So we'll kick it off. And are you able to just explain to me why you feel acceptance is so important, Polly?
Yeah, I mean, I chose those 6 things more to do with kind of individuals within business. So I feel like if you crack these things individually about yourself, then you're in a really good place to be a leader or run a business or really be effective within any business. So acceptance, I think so many of my clients are desperate to change who they are, but it's a real sort of core thing about who they are that actually once they get to the stage where they accept that actually they do like themselves and they are okay and being okay is enough, then I think life opens up to them and opportunities open up to them in a way that they just won't if you're constantly being really hard on yourself and thinking you should be much better. I'm not saying there's not room for improvement. I think that's a life's work. We could constantly improve, but I just think accepting who we really are, deep inside who we are, is a really strong position to start from.
Brilliant. I think I need to be really careful that I don't turn this into a coaching session where I get coached. There's a real tendency with this podcast where I can end up being just coached by fantastic people that I get onto interview. So, but it's interesting. Acceptance, I totally agree with. It was interesting. I went through my early 20s and mid 20s not really knowing what personal development was. I was working in a sort of small to medium sized privately owned business. And whilst I wanted development opportunities, I wanted to grow and get a better job and be promoted, I didn't really know what was entailed in doing so until I moved to a bigger organisation where there was a clear learning and development plan and succession planning as well. And I started reading a lot more professional development books. And initially, I felt like I was starting to lose my way a little bit, because I was a bit like, I don't really know who I am. This psychometric test telling me this thing, and all of them, I always come out really red, hard driving, sort of pushing along. And I guess I've learned to accept that over time, and that I do have my vulnerabilities in that, and I recognise those. It's interesting because I kind of went to this place where I thought, I don't really know, like, I'm trying so hard to develop my weaknesses that I found it quite hard to sort of accept potentially really who I was. And I saw that, why aren't I more this way? Because actually I could be more successful. And what do you sort of think to that, Polly, when you find people who have got that sort of clash in their heads?
I think it depends on which what it is that you're addressing in the context. So, for example, I'm trained in a psychometric, which is about emotional intelligence, called EQI. It's EQI2 and EQI 360. And within that, there are kind of 15 categories of your emotional intelligence. And when I thought, well, I'm a coach, my emotional intelligence is going to be really high, and then I did it. And the one that I was quite surprised about was my impulse control is really quite low compared with my other scores. And so I thought, oh no, that's low, that's really bad. And then as I have thought more about it, I feel like I'm kind of proud of the fact that I have low impulse control. It means that I can think on my feet, I can be spontaneous, and spontaneity leads to so many opportunities, whether it's kind of socially to have fun or business wise. It's really helped through lockdown to be able to just change direction quickly. So I think things, when you mention psychometrics, things are not necessarily what they seem. And if you seem like the kind of red type A, that you can instantly think, oh no, that means I'm really controlling and bossy and fast, need to get things done. But actually, when you filter it down, there'll be real advantages to that. And there are always areas for growth and areas to improve on. But I think you were just saying that you kind of had that crisis when you started looking at self-development things of, oh no, who am I? And I don't know if I like what I see. So I think that's the sort of situation where if you just accept what you see, but then you have complete control over what you decide to tweak or change or dial up or dial down.
Yeah. And do you know what? I think as I've focused more on developing, that is absolutely something that I've realised I can do. It really, you do have a choice. There's preferences, and then you kind of have a choice where the way in which you react. The 15 15-way system that you were just discussing sounds quite interesting. I don't think I've come across that, which will probably make me sound like a bit ignorant, so apologies for
no
that.
It doesn't at all. It's about emotional intelligence, and I'm really rubbish at remembering numbers, but it's something like 68% of good leadership is down to emotional intelligence, not kind of IQ intelligence. And so with that in mind, there are these 15 subcategories of emotional intelligence, and it starts with self-regard. There's things to do with your kind of self-expression, and then how you view others, and then decision making and stress management. So all of those things kind of come together and feed into each other to make you really a good leader. But you can see through this psychometric, you can see your areas for improvement.
Oh, awesome. That sounds really interesting, to be fair. I think I need to check that one out. I need to give that one
I'm very happy to do it with you.
Amazing. Let's get that booked. Awesome, cool. So moving on to sort of the second area, following acceptance, and onto sort of honesty, and honesty as a leader as well. I personally have come across and realised sort of how important that is. But are you able to just sort of crystallise that for us a little bit, please, Polly?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you just said honesty as a leader, I immediately thought of Boris Johnson and the government through the whole crisis. And when the pandemic started, I don't know if you remember the daily briefings, and there were often the scientific advisors, and they'd come on and they'd be really honest. I remember thinking, wow, they're saying we don't know, we really don't know what's going to happen next. We don't, but this is what we're going to try. This is what we think is going to work. But then as time went on, there was a sense that that kind of honesty wasn't happening anymore, and that things were a bit more covered up, and they weren't sharing things quite so much. And I think at that stage, I lost trust in in the system. And I think that's a really good example of leadership. If people know that their leaders are being honest with them about what's going on in the organisation, it makes you feel safe, and safety is absolutely imperative to good leadership. And and again, honesty in ourselves, with ourselves. So that's really difficult, I think, to be honest with ourselves about our emotions and our capability. And some people are really good at thinking they're brilliant at things, and actually, honestly, they might be quite average. And other people think they're absolute rubbish at everything, but honestly, they're quite average. So it's about self-understanding, I think, as well. And vulnerability, not being afraid to say that you're not so strong at something, and other people are better.
Yeah, absolutely. And trust and honesty are so intrinsically linked, aren't they? And building trust is hugely important if you want people to follow what you're saying and the way that you're trying to lead. That massively, my imposter just came out then, and I've had to push it back down again. So when you've just gone about people with overinflated self-confidence, and that as soon as it's interesting because that just brought out the imposter straight away, and me sort of saying, who am I to host a podcast and speak to you and have a podcast, which is strange, isn't it? And I have to sort of push that back down, because actually I'm not, there's nothing really any different about me. It was just something that I really wanted to do. But a lot of people will perceive that, I believe that I'm better and that I should have a podcast. And it's not so much that. I enjoy having good quality conversations and developmental conversations with people who have got different skill sets.
Yeah, and you've just been honest about the imposter, which that's reassuring for people to hear, isn't it? That they might see you as able to sit there and do a podcast, and they think, I could never do that, and you're actually saying you feel a bit like that sometimes, but you've just taken the risk.
Yeah, 100%. And then particularly like the way you called out that that people, I suppose I've always had a level of self-confidence, but not so much. I think there's it. And how I articulate that's probably a bit of a challenge, but around the fact that I don't believe I'm great at anything, but I've got the confidence to be able to just have a go at something and actually fail at it if it's total garbage, so what? Nothing ventured, nothing gained, I suppose.
Yeah, and so that's quite a risk taker to a certain degree, and I think that's where honesty as a leader really helps, because you don't say I'm willing to take that risk, but if you're honest, that should allow your team to be able to say, actually, I'm not prepared to take that risk, or since you do, I'm going to do it, but this is uncomfortable for me. And I think that honesty works both ways. So I think when it comes to people who are reporting into their leaders, being honest, that makes such a massive difference. But as we've already said, they have to feel safe in order to do that, because otherwise, if there's an expectation that everybody's brilliant at everything, it doesn't lead to very honest behaviours, does it? Everybody's trying to bravado wins.
And covering up mistakes and blame, but you get a blame culture then, don't you?
Definitely.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay. Yeah, cool. And for your third area, and actually this for me really, really resonates about responsibility. And I personally believe that that's so important for a leader, because I can think of clearly defined examples where I've been led by people who are unwilling to take responsibility for themselves, and how demotivating that is for me, or has been for me when I've worked alongside them. However, on the other hand, the level of responsibility that some people have taken. And particularly even when I've made a mistake and I'm blaming myself and they go, no, do you know what? I'll take responsibility for that because I've not explained well enough what I required, or you know, I've not developed you well enough, I'm not giving you enough training, and actually I'll take responsibility for that. And how much safer that makes you feel as a team member.
Yeah.
So I hope I didn't steal your thunder there, actually.
No.
But that's kind of, I guess that's just my perspective on reality for responsibility. And is that one that you share, or do you see it sort of slightly differently?
Yeah, so I think in teams then responsibility really needs to be shared, but ultimately you would hope that the leader will take responsibility for whatever happens. I have one of my clients, she's very senior in a very male dominated industry, and I'm always surprised with her because she doesn't give enough responsibility, I'd say, because there's a kind of, she has this need to understand every detail of every single thing that her team are doing. So I feel, you know, as she's given her team more responsibility, they've really, really grown. So there's trust both ways, isn't there, with responsibility? You need to be responsible for yourself. Everybody in a team needs to be responsible for their own actions, but that, you know, really the leader needs to make people know that they'll take ultimate responsibility. And it depends very much on the business, doesn't it? If it's, you know, there are jobs like if you're working for the NHS on the front line, you really do need to take responsibility for everything you're doing to a much greater degree than if you're in an office space and, you know, working on an advertising campaign.
Absolutely, yeah. And to be fair, sometimes I feel like I've got the world on my shoulders with responsibility, but actually that's a good leveler to when you equalise that with some of the decisions that people in the NHS are having to make, and you realise that actually, do you know what? If I spend £10 over here or £10 over there, what's the big deal, right?
Yeah.
You know, no one's going to die.
Yeah.
So excuse me a minute, because I did put myself on silent because the ice cream van's going by. So, do you want an ice cream? 99 flake.
I'd love one, thank you.
The weather is good enough, to be fair. At least it's not pouring with rain, which is normally the time the ice cream van comes out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, how rude of him to have not known that we were recording, right?
Or not to bring ice creams in. And the other thing I think about responsibility, so I see a lot with my clients, I think of not taking responsibility for their part in a relationship. So it doesn't need to be a working relationship, it could be any relationship, but there's a lot of kind of blaming, as you were saying earlier, of it's not my fault, they do this, you know, if I don't have what I need to be able to do it. And I think once we get into the mindset of actually it is my responsibility and I can control this situation, then I think things are so much easier. We do feel more in control and more able to make decisions.
Definitely. And that really resonated with me. And actually, I've shared it on a couple of recent podcasts. So people who do listen, I don't think anyone does listen religiously. So it's cool. I'll probably get away with it. They'll only ever listen to one at a time and then probably get switched off, right? But responsibility. So I love that as part of an equation. If you come across E plus R equals O. So E is an event. And then, so we have no control over an event. And then we have our responsibility. So our ability to respond and take responsibility for the action that's taken off the back of the event, and then that equals O, the outcome. And we're able to create a positive outcome or a negative outcome based on the level of responsibility we're willing to take and actually how we respond. And I've always found that quite a powerful and I suppose empowering point of view, in that accepting that sometimes, you know, shit happens, right? And we've got to take responsibility and for ourselves and for our actions and how we choose to respond to those. So, I thrive with responsibility. I really enjoy it, but I think that's a character trait that's probably also the sort of flip side of that ability to take responsibility is the control element, like you say, and actually pushing back and giving responsibility back to my team is certainly in my leadership roles in the past. That's something that I've struggled with, because I do, whilst taking responsibility, I also take control.
Yeah, and I think we can learn a lot from children. So some of the work I do is with parents and around parenting, coaching around parenting. And one of the 4 basic developmental needs of children is the need for responsibility. So that could be with a 5-year-old making them in charge of filling up the dog's water bowl or making their bed in the morning or something. It doesn't even have to be that big, but taking their plate away from the table, for instance. And I really think those needs map into adults as well. So I think there is a need for responsibility, but depending what else is going on in our lives, that responsibility need can change. It's a huge spectrum. And so when people go to work back to work after having children, the first few weeks they tend to not want responsibility and just to feel safe and settled in and realise they've still got a job and they're still being respected for their ability to do the job. But then very quickly they need responsibility, and if they're kind of slightly being patronised or looked after by not being given their proper role back because people think they might not be ready, that can often cause a massive reaction.
Yeah, fantastic. Do you know what, parenting tips as well? This is amazing. I've definitely taken that one home. You need to fill the water up on the dog bowl. I love it.
I always feel a little bit of a fraud when it comes to my parenting coaching, because I've got 3 teenagers and they're far from perfect, and they would definitely not say I'm a perfect mum. So I can tell you all the theory. Putting it into practice isn't quite so.
Do you know what? It's totally true though, and my 4 are all so different as well. They're massively different, and their own little personalities. And some of them really thrive on a bit of responsibility, and one of them's just really lazy. And you know who you're talking about if you're listening. Cool. Okay, awesome. So responsibility, hugely important. So the 4th area is around authenticity, and how important that is. And that's something that I consciously focus on. So why is authenticity so important for you, Polly?
Well, we've covered it quite a lot, and it kind of comes under all the other things as well. But I just think as a leader, being your true self at work is just so important. That's where you get the most respect. And I think we're all full of suspicion of somebody who doesn't quite seem themselves. And I think 20 years ago, a good leader would come to work in probably his suit, because it would have most likely have been a man, come to work in his suit, and you know very little about his family or what he did at the weekend, and he'd just come to work and do his job and tell you what to do, and that's it. All the statistics show that the real person leading gets the real results, and builds their rapport with the team. And that comes into your values as well. I think being authentic to your own values, allowing yourself to do your job based on your own values. So if you don't agree with the company values, really working out why. And actually, is that the right job for you? If you're working for a business where you don't agree with their values, that's not going to lead to a very fulfilled career for you. So there are some big questions under authenticity, I think. And it's quite a luxurious place to be able to be. And I think it takes a lot of work to really be able to be truly authentic, to even know your own values properly, let alone make sure you live according to them.
Yeah. I've loved writing my own business's vision and values, because I was so against a company that I worked for's values. I think if a company, and this is feedback for companies, and you might not agree, Polly, so I apologise if you don't agree, and I'm using this opportunity to voice this opinion, but I think if a company needs integrity to be written on their wall as a value, then they're in serious problems. And I was, to be fair, talking about it sort of just triggered me, because I felt really let down by a leader or one of my leaders previously, because I'd had what I believed was a confidential conversation around a lack of direct leadership from a direct leader. I'd sort of had a bit of a challenge, and they decided to share that openly with the person that I'd spoken about. No sort of agreement from me as to a strategy to approach it. Just that it had been left that they would consider it and come back to me, and they hadn't, and I'd just taken it to them and actually used the values of openness and honesty and integrity as a clause, or a get out clause, for having done so. I felt massively let down, and that was it. That was like my death certificate signed. It's like, you're dead to me now. I'm gone.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
It's savage.
Yeah. So those kind of company values need to be honest, don't they?
Yeah, definitely.
That's the way. And I think so often it is just somebody who thinks, so let's do values, let's make them this. And actually the real way to get values is as a whole organization coming together, talking
Yeah,
about what everybody believes in, because that's how you motivate the whole workforce.
yeah, definitely. I think for me, authenticity is I guess that's what I find so liberating about working for myself, because I found that I personally found that, and corporate life might be for some people, and I'm not saying that it isn't the right route, because it absolutely is for some people, and they'll find a really rewarding career for themselves if they find the right company to work for. But I found my experience was quite stifling, and inauthentic, and the politics as well. Really, really sort of, I found a real struggle. But again, that's probably just my character type, being hard charging and a bit dominant and wanting to sort of make my own decisions and what have you. And I think I thought it was financially driven, that I wanted the rewards of working for myself and running my own business. But actually, in reality, over time, developing myself, I realised it's not. It's about freedom and freedom of choice.
Yeah,
Really,
and I
really
think
hard.
authenticity really allows that. And as you say, lots of organisations really stifle authenticity, but lots of the organisations I'm with really encourage it. But they are investing in coaching, so they are a certain type of more open-minded, more broad-minded organisations, I suppose. But authenticity is where you get the best out of people, if they can come to work and be their authentic self and say what they're really thinking. And also, I think tied into authenticity is vulnerability. And, if leaders can be vulnerable, that is just such a huge help in terms of building trust and making staff feel safe.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, and that's so true as well, because I've worked in real male dominated environments before as well, and there's no quicker way for me to discredit somebody than kind of hiding behind rules and hiding behind that's just the way it is. Just be honest and just go, because that's the way you want it, mate. Just, if that's how you want it, just say, look, it's because I get to call the shots and it's my decision, so stick it. And actually, I'd have way more respect for that if someone had the confidence or even the bravado to just go, no, this is how it is, and I think this is right, and I'll stand on that. And actually, do you know what? You've taken it links to responsibility, doesn't it? If you're willing to take that responsibility, do you know what? I'll follow, because you're adamant, and that's cool with me. So let's go with it, and you take responsibility, and I'll help you. So, which is a lot of leadership.
There is the other. I mean, the flip side. For all positives, there's always a negative. And I'm having visions of you saying that in your male-dominated workforce, of everyone saying, "No way, I hate that idea. I'm not doing it. I'm going to do it my way." So there's a middle ground, isn't there, between kind of the way you say it and understand. But with a good leader, you'll be able to speak your mind, but you will respect the fact that there is a job that needs to be done, possibly in a certain way, but it could be changed in future.
No, perfect. Yeah, absolutely. And do you know what? So many memories flooding back now. I can't share them all. I'll just end up hanging myself. No, but I don't think many of them listen. It'll be fine. Okay, cool. So the fifth area is around simplicity and the importance of simplicity. So can you explain that a little bit more for me, please, Polly?
I think there can be a real sort of danger as a leader, and also as individuals, to talk things through at such a complicated and in-depth level. And I just think, generally speaking, when we're thinking of what we need to get done, or what's the kind of ultimate goal, or even down to like life, day-to-day life at home, when you boil things down to the absolute the simplest form, it gives you such freedom, I think, to make bigger decisions and think from a much broader perspective. So I feel like in coaching, often somebody will come with a problem, and I'll keep asking questions. So this huge problem that will dig down, and the real problem at the bottom is so much less complicated than the thing that's been troubling them. A bit like when you wake up in the night really worried about this thing that's totally you can't even think how you're ever going to solve this horrendous problem. And then by the morning, your brain's like, why was I worried about that? It's only, I just need to go to the dentist tomorrow and my toothache will be dealt with. I'm not going to lose all my teeth in 24 hours. But, you know, our brain goes crazy. And I think our brains are really bad at doing that whole sort of overthinking. And then there's also something, I think, in a leadership role where you can try, you know, you're so desperate to make everybody see that you know what you're talking about and that these important things are discussed, that you can overdo it. And I think just the simple approach is nearly 99% of the time the most effective approach.
Yeah, I love it. So important. It's and in the application in so many ways as well, because I've had a tendency of overcomplicating stuff unnecessarily, and particularly in my own head, even around my business as well. You know, I overcomplicate the marketing, I overcomplicate my message to customers or to clients, I overcomplicate my processes. And you know, I've sort of grown my team recently and realized that actually the way I do things is overcomplicated, and why isn't it simpler? And sometimes just taking a step back is and understanding why we do stuff and the root cause, and doing a bit of a root cause analysis can make so much impact. And I think you know, feedback I've had in the past is that I asked my wife, what am I really good at? What am I best at? And she said actually simplifying something, you know, something that's complex and just making it simple and easy to understand, which is kind of good, I suppose, considering I've done training and been doing training for a while, which is great. That's good feedback, right? But yeah, sometimes I look at stuff and just think, do you know what? Why am I like overanalyzing that? Why is that such an issue? Let's just keep it simple. I have a bit of a mantra from an ex-Scottish colleague of mine. He used to call it KISS, keep it simple, stupid. which I do repeat to myself occasionally.
I think we can fall into the kind of overcomplicating and dramatizing things in, you know, everything. Like, so going back to the authenticity, if you wanted to have a conversation with somebody in your team to say that, just something really basic, like I want you to stop to get to work on time. Let's say this is a conversation. You can go through your head all sorts of ways that this conversation is going to go, and you know, a million different assumptions about why they're late or whatever. And then you could just actually, if you strip it down to the straightforward thing, why do you care that they're late? Does it even matter that they're late? What do you need to know? And then you can just have a conversation that is, I notice you're late most days of the week. What's going on? And they're like, oh, it's just that I have to drop my kids off at school at 9 and I can't get here till 9:15. And then you have the solution. Whereas you could have spent weeks worrying about what if they kick off and we have a massive argument and they're saying I'm being unreasonable. And, you know, that was a really bad example, but there are so many of those things, aren't there, where we just overthink and over worry. And if you take the emotion out and strip it down to the facts, there isn't really that much to worry about.
Yeah, 100%. And I've found that certainly in the past where I've had anxiety over having a particular conversation, you know, despite being sort of having the character traits of being dominating or hard charging. Actually, I personally have struggled with having tough conversations and having developmental conversations with people, because I kind of second guess myself. I sometimes think maybe I've got it wrong, or maybe, you know, I guess if you believe that you're a perfectionist and that you've got high expectations, then sometimes you have too high expectations of other people. So you kind of second guess yourself. And actually, I think if you ask, or in my opinion, sometimes the best questions are the simplest, aren't they? And you just ask a simple question and you can actually get a much better understanding of, like you say, why is that person late, for example? When you've worked yourself up into a frenzy that you're going to have like this big 12-round boxing match, and it turns out that actually it's just something really straightforward that you can try and work together through. So
even why does it matter? I think that's often, you know, we're kind of stuck in this thing of everybody should be at work on time, for example, and then think, why does it actually affect anything? It's not like they need to press the button to open the factory at 9 o'clock. They are just in a desk job, and it doesn't make any difference whether they're there at 9:15. They can just work an extra 15 minutes. So I think there are lots of those things where it's easy to just carry on without questioning the system.
At risk of sounding really, really chilled out, I got challenged on my new people starting in the business who are doing a fantastic job, by the way. If you're listening, you're doing awesome. But they've been working from home, and part of the deal is that we're going to look to keep them at home as much as possible. And I had some pushback from sort of colleagues and other business owners about how you're going to know that they're being busy and how you're going to know they're being proactive. And I've thought for a long time, and I think that was one of the things that frustrated me when I was employed, was that and I've had bosses that were so hell bent on, like, it's like 5 to 6, you should still be here and carrying on until 6 o'clock. And actually, my work doesn't finish just in 5 minutes. Like, you know, why I've always struggled with, like, why isn't work an outcomes based proposition rather than a time coverage? And I understand there are peak times of the day where you've got client demand, and I understand in the case of a shop, or, you know, when you're open for business and when you're closed for business, there's clearly defined times where a business needs to be operational, and operative and technical staff need to be there in those time frames. Regardless of how productive they're being, there's a necessity for them to be available to work, and that makes absolute sense to me. But certainly in sort of a lot of other roles, particularly around administrative functions, around sort of leadership functions, really we should be focusing so much more heavily focused on outcomes and work around, you know, what outcome is it that we want, and then a lot of these conversations around time and going on lunch and coming back from lunch and what have you, like, what does it matter?
Yeah, and it's down to trust, isn't it? And just because you're all sitting in the same office, that doesn't mean they're being productive. People could just be there doing their online shopping and Facebook and stuff like that just because they're in the office. And we all know people who do that from when we've worked in offices, you know, that there are lots of people like that. So I'm totally with you on the presenteeism thing. It's always been a big gripe of mine, and lots of people are a lot more productive at home. There are usually far less distractions unless you've got all children.
No, exactly. And my problem's normally the cupboard, actually, to be honest. You know, I have I have the appetite of a rugby player, even if I definitely have the background of one. But yeah, I just it's actually better for me to come into the office when it comes to food, or my waistline anyway. But yeah, it's I don't know, it's fun, you know. So right, okay, so the last area is fun, and actually I know the point I was going to make. It went then, but actually it's come back, and it was one that I really wanted to make, and that was around business owners and employing people. And certainly something that I realised, that I was speaking to a friend of mine actually on the podcast a little while ago, and he made a really great point, which was, you know, a lot of business owners have got the expectation that their team and their people are going to want to achieve as much out of their business as they are, and actually in reality there's got to be a level of acceptance that whilst people will share your vision, and you need to communicate your vision in a way that will inspire and motivate people to want to work for you, they're not going to get up at 4 a.m. and go to bed at midnight having worked and thought about and dedicated themselves to the business in the same way that you're going to. And that's just something you've got to accept. And that's life. You know, people aren't, you know, there's a certain thing that's inbuilt to business owners and higher level leaders who have pushed and charged and done what they need to do to try and reach the level that they're at, particularly, and got to realise that there are different people are motivated by different things to what they are.
Yeah, that's so true, and that's really true when it comes to rewards as well. So you mentioned earlier that you thought running your own business was about financial gain, and actually it's about freedom. And for lots of there are so many businesses where I know someone who owns a recruitment company, and he always rewards people with holidays and weekend breaks. but some people just want the cash. They're just like, I don't want that holiday. I want that £2,000 for the ski trip to be able to do up my bathroom, or I want to go on holiday with my partner. I don't want to go on holiday with work. And other people just really want to be told they're doing a great job, and that's worth thousands of pounds to them just to get that feedback. So it's really about knowing, that's another simple thing, isn't it? It's about knowing the people who are in your team and what makes them tick and motivates them.
Awesome. Yeah, no, definitely 100%. Okay, cool. So we'll move now on to the final one, which is fun. And I'm quite serious, so I need to learn to lighten
I was
up a little
about to
bit
say,
sometimes.
come on, you can't say fun without smiling.
Yeah, I do bring the laughs for the podcast, right? But genuinely, it's something that I massively struggle with, chilling out and having a bit of fun, right? So yeah, talk about what good examples of fun you've come across that are great for a leader to be able to demonstrate, because I think a lot of people expect a leader to be really serious all the time and everything's about achieving goals and what have you.
Yeah, I suppose so. What I'd say is, first of all, you're kind of describing yourself as not very fun,
No.
but you must have your own kind of fun. Whether for you fun is just lying on the sofa and watching TV, or whatever it is, you don't have to tell us what it is, but there is something. And I think just making work not too serious, because who wants to go to work every day and literally just be like at their desk doing it? And so it's not. Another thing, another side of fun that I think when people are really trying to inject fun into the business is, I worked, one of my very first jobs was a graduate trainee for Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And I used to they basically replaced cars for people whose cars had broken down or whatever in the garage. We'd go replace their car with the hire car. And so my job involved a lot of time in car body shops and places. And then we used to have to do this thing where we took all the guys who worked in the garages out for bowling evenings. And that was meant to be fun. And I'm so shit at bowling. They used to have to put the inflatable things for children in. So everybody thought this was fun. And I said, this is the most humiliating, belittling experience of my life. This is not fun. So I think it's not about doing things that are fun. And I think those kind of team building, let's all go on an assault course for a weekend, that's only really fun for the really active, sporty people, isn't it? It's not really fun for the people who don't exercise and who feel really self-conscious to be wearing a tracksuit. And so I think it's just about making it, encouraging people to have a laugh and to have friendships within the organisation, and that it is encouraged for everybody to get on rather than for you just to get on with your work. It's an old-fashioned approach, isn't it, to get on with your job. But there are people who still very much kind of have their work self and their non-work self. And yeah, I think it was also, when I was doing these things, it was about us as individuals, and just make time for fun. And that what comes into that is also self-care, that we all hear so much about, but it's not actually that easy for everybody to find time to do yoga or whatever the self-care thing is that they feel they should, or go for a run or whatever. But just time to be nice to yourself, I think.
Yeah, got you. No, definitely. And I find fun by working out and running and getting in the gym and stuff like that, which sounds really sad, doesn't it, I suppose? But I don't drink or do anything exciting, to be fair. Very, very
Going
boring.
to the gym could be exciting though, if it is
Yeah.
you. And I think that's the other thing, like, the judgment around fun. Fun isn't only dancing on the tables in a nightclub. Most of us sadly don't have opportunities for that kind of fun anymore.
True.
But
True.
Whatever it is that just makes time for yourself to feel happy, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I enjoy reading, to be fair, which fun isn't linked to reading, I suppose, but I do enjoy a good read. And it's there's all sorts of stuff, isn't there, I suppose, and that's, I guess that's a challenge for workplaces, to find activities and find ways to make work fun, and to encourage friendship and relationships and laughter in a workplace where you've got a diverse workplace where people will have different types of humour as well. I suppose that presents a challenge, but certainly one that's worth tackling and worth getting into, for sure.
And maybe fun was the wrong word, and it is something around just having good relationships.
Yeah,
Because I think I've noticed through lockdown, a couple of the leaders I work with have ended up doing a sort of weekly just chat with their teams. So they're all obviously not together and they have lots of meetings, but just like on a Friday afternoon, half an hour for everybody just to come and have a chat where there's no work results to come out of it. It's just about checking in. And so it's kind of around being caring for your team and caring for yourselves.
Amazing. Yeah, no, that's great stuff. And just like that, poof, the time has gone. And I know that you've got another meeting to get to, Polly. So thank you so much for joining me. It's been really, really great talking to you about these areas. And, thank you so much for your insights. Just for our listeners, if you want to go and find Polly, Polly, could you just sort of share with us where people can find you and find out a bit more about your business?
Yeah, so I'm Polly Downs, and my website is pswcoaching.com. It's actually being redone at the moment, so you'll probably just find yourself on a landing page. But and I'm on LinkedIn, so feel free to get in touch. It'd be great to hear from anyone.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Polly. And
thank you, Pete.
No worries. And thank you everyone for listening. Really, really pleased that you're here and listening to us. And if you like it, please comment and like and share and tell other people to come along and have a listen and subscribe and all that good stuff. And join us again next week for another interview. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
I really hope you loved today's episode. And if you did, please make sure you subscribe and listen out for future episodes too. Please do share it across your social media channels. We hope to reach more and help more people. If you want to find out more about me, my name's Pete Rushmer. You'll find me across any social media channel and my business, Flagship Partners, and we're your partners in success across your business. Thank you. See you again soon.